Welcome to Yuppies and Harpoons. This is Joe Moeller, and with me is the normal, the unnormal, the amazing Jacob Glenzer, and we're going to be talking about two primary topics today.
Hey, nice.
The GOP
Catchy.
primary debates just happened, and we also have some elections that we'd like to go over. My joke is that Jacob's second wife did not perform that well, Nikki Haley. Jacob, I was watching this debate, and I actually thought it was one of the better debates. Even though I am a Nikki Haley fan. Not so far as that she's my well, I guess she'd be my first wife. I'm not quite as Mormon, but I
don't know where this joke is going, but I'm glad you're doubling down.
It just never stops. Maybe I'll do a Ronna McDaniel Romney throw in there too. But no. Anyway, so I was watching this debate, and I had all these, I didn't even know if I wanted to watch it because, just with the current events going on and all the foreign policy that we've been intertwined with, this kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. And it was, I thought, a fairly substantive debate where people gave really good answers. And you had some people throwing stuff back and forth at each other. It was kind of a more serious debate, and it was interesting because it was coming. We were thinking about doing this podcast right after the election results on Tuesday, but then we're like, you know what? No, we're going to wait so that we can talk about the election results and talk about the GOP primary debate, kind of as a 2-in-1. But kind of just going off of that, like, what did you think about this? Like, what were your initial takeaways? Who did you think actually performed the best? And do you think any of this means anything?
Well, yeah, I think tying in the election and then this debate right here, I think it's great timing to plan them back to back like this because they really piggyback off of where trends are going in the country, and then with the results, and then you actually kind of get to hear people say what they're going to do about it on stage. Definitely having a smaller stage, huge help. You didn't have Doug from North Dakota just bringing every question back to energy and oil and then China. It was like he would get a question on housing, and you'd be like, well, we need more oil and get rid of China. And it's like, all right, got it. So that helps a lot. But I think there's less jabs. You had a couple, Ramaswamy going after Nikki Haley's daughter, which I think is just a low jab to bring someone's daughter into it. But she kind of had like a Will Smith remark. Like, don't bring my daughter into this. So yeah, that was a little good clip, but overall, I don't think it really revealed a whole lot. I don't think it's going to persuade voters one way or the other. So to me, it wasn't super critical of an outcome. The first debate, I think, helped bring attention to a lot of people. I would be shocked to see if there's any big sways in polling, a week out from now. Whereas that first debate, you did see some of the candidates jump pretty significantly afterwards. So in that sense, the debate, I don't know how successful it is, although it kind of helps see some of the mood has changed. And I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the responses, which I feel like were softened or more strengthened too. But yeah, dive into.
What's interesting is that, as much as I hate to say this, the second debate, which was like my least favorite debate, it reminded me of like the first presidential debate in 2020 where Trump and Biden were just like screaming the whole time. The second GOP debate actually had the most post poll movement between the two previous debates that we'd seen. After the first debate, nothing changed. Nothing. I mean, Ramaswamy had a little bump, but Nikki Haley really took off after the second debate.
Mm-hmm.
She went from just kind of a fourth place person to because Ramaswamy was third there, and then pretty much overtook Ramaswamy. And I thought she did a pretty good job campaigning up until the third debate. And so the problem is, these debates, they're interesting. If you can actually continue to gain momentum at each debate, if you gain 6 points every debate, you'll make some significant headway. But the problem is that you need to do that every debate. And I think Haley's batting .333, which is really good in baseball, but not good in politics.
Mhm.
She had a good first debate. She maybe she did okay in this last debate. Frankly, I thought that she looked bad on China. Whether or not it was fair or not, I think I had some problems with the moderators. They wouldn't let people really go back and forth much. But then
Yes.
again, I think the moderators didn't want to do that because they saw how it went in the second debate. So um, I thought that was actually more for the better that people weren't able to go back and forth as much. The person that
Well, I
my
think
problem.
you saw it decline towards the end of the debate, though, when you saw more and more cheap shots or these quick jabs towards the end. I think candidates kind of picked up like, oh, we can kind of get away with a little bit more because people aren't rebutting
Yeah,
what we're saying. And so, they would show the two candidates on screen, and the one would be mouthing like that's not true, or this is a lie, or whatever they were saying. And that was kind of helpful, being like there's probably more to what they're saying. But I think you do need to be able to defend yourself to some point, and the moderators, I think in the first debate, did a good job of controlling that. The second debate, it turned into chaos towards
yeah,
the
no, definitely. The person that I continuously find myself enjoying the person that nobody else likes in these debates. The person that I thought gave the best answers. Well, actually, I was curious. Who do you think gave the best answers?
I think Ramaswamy, the version that showed up at the third debate, gave some really strong answers. More, and you can measure this from a couple different ways. One, of the response of the crowd. Two, of like what people have been talking about and remember. I think they gave some strong one.
Mm.
What about yourself?
Um, I think Ramaswamy was second for me. I thought it was Christie.
Hmm.
I think that now the thing is, Christie has no chance of the nomination using. I mean, Christie's just going to. I don't know what purpose he serves other than denigrating Trump, and so when he doesn't denigrate Trump and just turns into this like rational person, everyone already hates Christie so much. We already know that like 2/3 of the GOP would never vote for him in a primary. So it's really tough to see what his strategy other than the anti-Trump train would be. And so I thought that his approach was interesting, and I really liked it. I mean, I thought that he had the best counters to a lot of Ramaswamy's more new style republicanism. And Christie really sounded like the old school Republican in the debate. He was talking about you know federalism when it came to abortion. He was talking about the importance of signaling to the world strength when it comes to Ukraine, and fending off Vladimir Putin so that we don't have to have a war. That we're not dragged into a land war in NATO. Keeping China at bay in Taiwan by not letting them show, basically, not letting China invest, millions and millions of dollars into Russia so that they can invade Ukraine and then, exploit American weakness. No, we need to show American strength so that that can be subverted and then China won't invade Taiwan. I thought that he did a good job linking those in. With Ramaswamy,
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
I thought Ramaswamy had a very strong debate, much better than his first. I hated him that first debate. The
He
problem
was
with these
petty in that.
guys.
Would you
Yeah.
let me share some thoughts on Chris really quick, and then let's jump into
Oh yeah,
him.
sure. Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think I disagree with you on Christie for a couple of reasons. One, his whole base is this, and Joe, you're chugging a gallon of milk. Like, are you really that Pennsylvania Dutch? You just drink milk straight from the gallon, and
If you're not Dutch, you're not much, man.
but Christie, if his whole platform is like the anti-Trump, if you really want to do that, then consolidate with another candidate and not have Trump leading the polls. If he drops out, endorses other candidates, uses the weight he has, he could make Trump not the nominee. But instead, he's staying in, draining resources. And then two, I think some of his questions, he would start out by saying, "I've been saying this from the beginning," or it was almost like this, I have a chip on my shoulder. I've been right all along, and you guys are finally letting me talk. And I think you could kind of tell he knew he was losing during it. He felt deflated. The content of some of his responses, I agree with you in the sense they were strong and the right things to be said. But Christie's not liked not because of the content of him. He's liked because of the perception of him. He, hugged Obama, and that tanked him in the polls. And he's made all these different errors, if you will, over his political campaign to be a presidential candidate. And it kind of shows now in the debate stage where he has good content, but he doesn't really have that commanding presence that you need. So,
yeah, no, I mean, look, I don't disagree at all about the training resources, and if the more candidates you have, the more it splices the field, and the more that gives it an advantage to Trump. And no disagreement there at all. I'm just saying, I have an appreciation for people when they're asked a question, they answer it,
yes.
and they answer it in a fairly sophisticated way. Like Ron DeSantis was asked a question on China, and he's like, "My strategy is very simple: we win, they lose." And I'm like, "Shut up! Like, just shut up!" And Christie actually answered the question.
Right.
And he talked about the nuclear submarine program. And I thought that was a good answer. It's
and he loves to bring in those like things that people aren't really saying, but are the actual answers. Like, of course, nuclear subs. So people probably think about we need more ships and nuclear subs at the same time. He's like, well, this is the actual way we fight. It's not by ships anymore.
Right. Because the American naval force has been, for one, the idea that China outnumbers our Navy is just it's ridiculous. Like
by
obviously
tonnage, they're not even close by tonnage, which is how we kind of measure it. But by number of ships, they do. But their ships are diesel ships. They're not nuclear.
And they're not blue water ships.
Right.
Right. These are ships that maybe can go 100 miles or a couple hundred miles, along the coast. This isn't. These aren't now. This is not going to be used to create a global, blue water navy. It's something very regionally based, and so it clearly implicates Taiwan. But this isn't something that you're going to have to be worried about, implicating.
Part of the concern too is there's a military strategy, numbers out number force, and so in a actual war against China, that could get concerning because they do have more ships, and if that can hold up, it's going to be a tough fight. So there is that enough of a fear there.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's I thought the substance, though, going back to the substance of the debate was strong. I think Ramaswamy pushed an interesting debate on Ukraine for the first time, other than just talking about neocons and using code words for the Jews. I thought that his actual comments on Ukraine is suggesting to they're not going to hold elections, the persecution of Christians. Why are we funding an anti-democratic state when another anti-democratic state is invading them? I thought that those were actually good points. And frankly, the counter response to that, which was from Tim Scott, which I thought was pretty weak, was, "We're just over there to try to weaken Russia's military." I'm like, really? That's it? That's all we're trying to do? Well, that's pathetic. We're spending $200 billion to weaken Russia's military?
I think other candidates went in and elaborate further. This also signals support
I can't stand Tim Scott at this point. Just get off the stage, man.
I didn't know what he was doing up on stage the whole time.
I didn't even, whenever he came on screen, except for that one comment, I fast forwarded. So that's about how much time of day I gave him. Well, one of the other questions I had, I know that there's lots of talk about the debate. Oh no, let's stay on the debate. What did you think about DeSantis? I thought that he was the quiet story of the debate, the one that everyone kind of overlooked, but had clearly the most development.
Mm-hmm. I think he does need to talk to Richard Nixon's advisor. Nixon being that he lost the first, lost to JFK because he was sweating on stage. Like DeSantis sits there and has that smile, licks his lip the whole time. He needs some help getting prettified, if that's a word. Nixon, then later on gets better and he figures out how to debate and look good on stage. I think we need he needs to address that, which is a work in progress. But I agree with you. I think he is coming around to full-fledged answers while still trying to be snippy. I think the first debate, he was very weak. It definitely, I think, dampened his numbers significantly. And part of that was he was trying to have all these jabs, but it wasn't really the setting for jabs. And I think he brought a lot more substance to his responses this time, which I think, like you said, is silent. Kind of a silent winner in a way, because I think he had good debate overall, but doesn't do anything shocking.
I thought that this debate was a stronger debate for him. DeSantis, if he just had a little bit of some social skills, he could be a very charming looking guy. And instead, he looks like, he has like a torch stuck up his ass. It's just, I don't know what you would do if you're his staff, but I think there's a bigger story actually at stake other than his awkwardness on stage. He had a big transition when it came to what he supported. DeSantis, he's a Tea Party guy, Freedom Caucus guy, and all of a sudden is not in favor of cutting entitlements. Didn't want to raise the retirement age.
Yep.
Really just following in Trump's footsteps, even went in the debate to say something which I thought was just kind of where he's like, and we will build the wall, and Mexico, yes, Mexico will pay for it. Kind of just turning him into like a little bit of a mini Trump character. Obviously when it came to like fentanyl being driven across the border, using the rhetoric of using the U.S. military to invade another sovereign country, which I don't know how that's going to work. But I think it's really interesting how there is this shift away in the GOP from fiscal responsibility when you have a national debt that has a $800 billion annual interest payment that you have to make in order to afford what we're spending, and to not go after the largest contributor towards federal spending, which is Social Security and Medicaid. I think is asinine. And
this isn't even a cut entitlement question. This is, do you want Social Security in 40 years or not? Because the way we're on, people aren't going to have Social Security. The ones receiving it will, but none of the younger generation will, or it'll be a fraction of what it is. So it's less about cutting entitlements even, and the whole Republicans, we don't want welfare state, and it's more of we know we're going to have it, but how are you going to adjust and fix the glaring issue in our country?
Well, and one of the things I was talking to someone at my school about was part of the reason that I would vote for, or had in the past, was going to say I was just going to really hold my nose and vote for DeSantis, is because I view Republicans as more fiscally responsible than Democrats. But when you start saying things like we're not going to touch entitlements, Trump didn't touch entitlements, so we added $8 trillion to the debt. And I'm starting to look at a situation where when it comes to DeSantis' foreign policy, I'm 50-50 in terms of I think he handles some regions of the world better than Biden, but I think Biden handles some regions of the world better than DeSantis. And if you're not going to touch entitlements and you're going to cater to, well, how should I word this? Conspiracy theories domestically, it's starting to make the DeSantis Biden vote harder. because DeSantis is becoming more and more affiliated with Trump. And with Trump, I've said, I know that you disagree with this, but like if it's between Trump and Biden, I'm voting Biden. Um, and
Uh,
it feels like because even if you just put aside the the election stuff with Trump and how he tried to subvert democracy, which is I think is a pretty big problem. He's just not that different from Biden on a lot of the same domestic issues. I mean, obviously with the court appointments, he's different. But on things like on spending, which I think is a national security issue, he's virtually the same.
I get what you're basically saying that there's a narrowing path between Biden and DeSantis and then Trump as well. And it's like, well, at least like people aren't going to make the switch. There's not enough of a difference. Those who voted for Biden aren't going to switch over to DeSantis if things like entitlements are going to be the same. Like everything is status quo. But we might not have wokeness. And it's like, well, that's not enough to sway voters. If anything, that's swaying voters away from them. And that shows in the numbers. I mean, Trump is edging, beating Biden right now, but it's still like margin of error basically. And DeSantis is now polling coming in, losing to Biden, which at one point, he was ahead of Biden by a decent amount. But then you have Nikki Haley's polling still ahead of Biden by the largest margin. And
Haley,
I think
you said that Haley looks the strongest
against Biden. When you match up Biden versus another candidate, DeSantis is losing against them. Haley's is in one polling here, 49% versus 43 to Biden, which is the largest gap.
Well,
in polling.
Nationally speaking, a Republican only needs to beat Biden by about 3.5 points, or Biden has to beat a Republican by about 3.5 points nationally in order to win the Electoral College. That's the estimates normally used. And so if Biden's +2, the Republicans will probably win 270, electorally speaking. So the problem that the Democrats are facing right now is that not only DeSantis would beat Biden today, Trump would beat Biden today, Haley would beat Biden today, everyone would beat Biden today, according to the polls.
And I think what the pollings don't take into account is we're not voting today. I think if the question was, would you vote for him today, the polling wouldn't be this close for Trump and Biden. I think Biden wins again and again.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, because it's.
Well, I say that because Trump candidates have lost hand in hand again since 2017, and I think this might be a good segue too. Of Ramaswamy, I think came out really strong with his opening statement. I think it was right on target in so many different ways, and one of them being calling out Ronna McDaniel. This is the RNC chairwoman. She came in 2017 after Reince Priebus became chief of staff for Trump. Reince had done incredible job as RNC chair. Kind of after losing elections to Obama, he came in and you have just a sweeping victories up into 2016. When a lot is going against the Republican Party, he found a way of winning. Ronna McDaniel has lost every single election since she's been chairwoman. And initially, she did a phenomenal job of fundraising. Just completely out fundraised the Democrats year after year up into 2020. Since then, her fundraising has plummeted to where the Republicans are in a pretty narrow cash spot, about 11 million on hand versus nearly 30 million for the DNC. And the fundraising is just not coming in either. So, I say all this of you have this candidate who's sitting there and it's like, or you have the chairwoman sitting there, head of the RNC. The party has no direction and she's not even able to win or fundraise. Why does she have a job? And let's get her out of there. I think that clarifies a whole lot for the mess that we're in, and the fact that the candidates who cannot win are up against are being propped up again and again by the RNC. It's Trump being propped up by the RNC. They paid for campaign ads last time. They've helped him out quite a bit, and he just can't win. His candidates that he
but this is the
endorses in election can't win. It's just
but
why.
there's an issue here. There's a big issue here, and it's that Ramaswamy, and it's interesting that you're agreeing with Ramaswamy's statement, because I think you guys are you may agree on the surface, but I think it's for two totally different reasons. Ramaswamy would never attribute the reason for Ronna McDaniel's failures as being because of her support to Trump. It's because she's a part of the old GOP establishment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's her linkage to the neocons, the old school Republicans. That's why Republicans are losing, according to Ramaswamy. He would never attribute the reason that Republicans are failing because we've run a multitude of election deniers in purple districts. So we run candidates like Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania. I mean, you have Blake Masters who lost in Arizona, and then that was a very winnable race. JD Vance only won by 6 points in Ohio. It was a big underperformance in my view for a state like Ohio in a red election year. And then we had Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania that Trump endorsed. And I mean, it's just been Trump endorsement after Trump endorsement after Trump endorsement, and loss after loss after loss after loss. And so I agree with Vivek that Ronna McDaniel is a problem, but the problem is that she's too in step with people like Ramaswamy, who've driven this party to become a party of losers. It wasn't like the party of Mitch McConnell back in 2010 and 2014 was a party of losers. We just happened to be running against one of the most talented politicians in 2008 and 2012 in Barack Obama. But
we also put up, McCain ended up not being very strong as a candidate either. So you had a two-step there.
That's true. But Romney was a strong candidate.
But Obama was a very strong candidate, and they couldn't even come close to, clearing a, he just swept, basically, and I mean, not swept.
And so I get tired of these. I get tired of the anonymous establishment. What is the establishment? Who is the establishment? Is it Mitch McConnell? Who are these candidates that are running in these races that that represent the establishment? I don't understand it. The establishment doesn't win in the primaries anymore. Okay, these aren't our candidates that are running in the primaries and that are winning. And so, if the establishment is to blame, is it because they didn't win in the primary, or is that the fault? Is it because the GOP base is too stupid to nominate people who are a part of the establishment? Is that why? Because the establishment is ineffective and can't get its way anymore in the GOP because it's been overrun by lunatics like Ramaswamy, who just nominate perpetually these losers who never ever win, whether it's in 2018, whether it's in 2020, 2022, 2023. It's just an endless cycle of losing. And then, you know what? Maybe it is the establishment. Maybe it's because we don't have the balls to go out and actually run effective campaigns, to campaign on our principles, to campaign on what the Republican Party used to represent. Maybe that's why the establishment is at fault, because we let cucks like Ramaswamy get on the stage and we never have anybody up there with the balls to respond to them. That's the problem that I have with the establishment. But end of rant.
You got it, though. I mean, like, what else can you say? Because it's just complete idiocracy, putting up these candidates time and time again, expecting different results. And like you said, what is the establishment? It's the same thing as, like, what is wokeness? What is a rhino? These are just buzzwords people like to throw around, and they have no substance behind them, and they can't be described. But
no, actually, let me stop you there. I actually have no. So what is the establishment? I'll tell you what the establishment is. The establishment is an AKA for AIPAC and the Jewish lobby. That is what the establishment is. Okay, and everybody knows this. Okay, it's the same thing as neocon. Okay, it's the people up there who run the media. Who when they're in third grade learn how to manage the weather for the world. It's all this. That's what they mean by the omnibus establishment, and I get so sick of it. It's like, the plutocrats at the top of the world who happen to go to synagogue on Friday and Saturday. I just get, I don't know. That to me is what it means. And whenever I hear those undertones, I just, I don't know, roils my skin, because it's, we have enough problems on the world stage involving that sort of rhetoric. We don't need more of it in our party. And ironically, that's the problem, right? Is we, or I'm sorry, that's not the problem. That's the irony, right? Because we had this bizarre subject of Israel come up in the GOP debate, and and and
Mhm.
and on the one hand, you have these undertones of anti-Semitism being used by people like Ramaswamy to talk about the establishment and those people up there who run the party.
You're saying
Um,
the silent
and
parts out loud. That's all.
I mean, and and then when it comes to things like Israel, the GOP, debate, like, these people just come out and they're all in support of Israel, and so you have like this weird dynamic where you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who,
Well,
are
let's correct
all
the
out,
record.
and
Let's correct the record on that. Ramaswamy was not for promoting Israel in the
that's
first
true.
debate,
That's
and
true.
then
Well, and he wasn't. Go
October
ahead.
7th changed, and it's not like he's like pro Israel either. He's just not criticizing Israel like he was. He's like,
Well,
yeah,
no,
I
no,
guess
no.
we can send some aid.
I no, he didn't say that. He didn't say
He
that at
didn't. He didn't
all.
even say that. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so and that's what was interesting. Yeah, I guess to Ramaswamy's credit, he had the most bizarre position on Israel I've ever heard, which was, I'm gonna go into a I'm gonna go into a GOP debate, and I'm gonna say I love Israel so much that I'm going to call it a third world. I'm going to call it a first world country, and because it's a first world country, it doesn't need our aid. I'm like, okay, like, that's I guess a wink and a nod to like stripping funding away from country. All right, fair enough. Um, the dynamics when it comes to the GOP and its relationship to Jews is just such a. I feel like we could just go down that rabbit hole and never stop, because you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who like talk about Jewish space lasers being responsible for California, fires, but then the moment Israel gets attacked, it's like, oh my God, we got to go and we got to defend Israel. Why? Why do we need to defend the land of the people you said lit California on fire? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so do me a favor and shut up. Like, I just, I don't know. Anyway, and so you just have this dynamic. I mean, maybe that's why Israel's near the desert, right? So that they can't start forest fires. That's why the Balfour Declaration
You
actually
do have a
happened.
point. I didn't think about that before.
Yeah,
We,
yeah. You ever go down to the Negev? There's no trees. So that's, Jewish space layers just don't do anything.
yeah, it's all adding up. Wow. Maybe she's not the crazy one. Maybe we are.
We were supposed to talk about the elections. I noticed that Ohio came out and voted to constitutionalize the right to abortion.
Which essentially was just affirming Roe v. Wade in their state. I, yeah, I mean, I think there's the issue, which is abortion, and that's one thing to talk about. But I think there's a second issue about the election results overall. Is Republican run on pro-life platform, and they lost every time this issue on abortion has come up. And with Ohio, they lost handedly.
Yeah. Um, the the fact is that after Roe v. Wade was undone, and all of a sudden everyone in the GOP realized, oh my God, we actually have to have a stance. It's really easy to you have these petty little slogans for gullible voters about, like, no abortions except for rape, incest, and life of the mother, right? As if that was ever a serious policy proposal. I mean, and that's what's crazy to me is that the GOP, in 2016, you had people like John Kasich being pressed by primary voters about, do you really think that it's acceptable for there to be exemptions for women who were raped with abortion? And John Kasich is like, yes, I do. This was clearly just some a niche conversation within the GOP, because the moment Roe was undone, the reality on the ground hit for the GOP. This is not where the American public is, and that doesn't have anything to do with Trump. That doesn't have anything to do with any of our party leaders. It has everything to do with we've been able to hide behind Roe v. Wade. We've enjoyed hiding behind Roe v. Wade because we've been able to raise massive amounts of money off of ultra pro-life voting coalitions like the evangelical base, saying that, and the ultra Catholic base, saying that we're going to ban abortion, right? Entirely. When we knew that the polls said, we knew what the polls said.
Before it was, most people were for ban to some extent, not a full all-out ban, but there's a majority in favor of like a 12 to 15 week ban.
Yeah, I think that's still the case.
And it's still, correct.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree with you that Republican GOP was hiding behind Roe v. Wade. I think, and it shows now. But the messaging, I think that the issue is the messaging. The GOP doesn't have good messaging, and this goes on other issues as well. But they can't get their act together. And then you have Ohio voting to have abortions in 20 weeks and older allowed, and it's so far from any even close to moderate position even. And it's like the only reason was the messaging. This is a state that would have had a good chance to pass it, but the messaging around it was horrible.
Yeah, and you see this with every other sort of policy problem, and this is kind of a complicated thing to say, but if you look at healthcare, for instance, it's really easy for the Democrat Party to have a niche group that says, we're going to have single payer healthcare. There's not going to be any we're going to eliminate all privatized forms of healthcare, all private insurance companies, et cetera. And then all of a sudden you have 60 votes in the Senate, exactly 60. Oh, well, it turns out the Democrat Party isn't really in favor. Does that mean that the Democrat Party pivoted to the right, and catered into like capitalist instincts? Or no, it's that when you actually have the power to effectuate change, you become much more of a realist, and that's the situation that the GOP is going to have to find itself and figure out where it stands, because while it was able to hide behind this curtain of Roe v. Wade. If Roe v. Wade had been torn down in 2004 or had been torn down in 2014, you would have had a GOP that would have been just as upset at Greg at a Texas governor passing a 6-week abortion ban as we are today, because it's put the national conversation in a place where we're paying the price of these ultra restrictive abortion bans being passed in other states. The fact is that people watch what Florida did. People watch what Texas did. People watch what Georgia did. And they're completely opposed to that level of abortion restrictions. It's a pivot to the right. It's a position that the GOP decided to take up and act on after Roe was overturned. And it bore out national consequences. That's what in a way that has hurt the party, and I think that the GOP,
Youngkin, who just had a sweeping victory in Virginia, and kind of turned the tidal waves. Now he has a Democrat legislative branch because of the fear of the abortion question. It was a reaction to that, and so it's hurting GOP outside of it. Because it's making candidates lose, and even candidates that aren't taking positions on this or are in line with what their constituents want, it's the fact that they're part of this party, they're losing.
The Americans are in favor of more restrictions on abortion. you just can't be a lunatic about it. You need to be, I think Americans are in favor of 15-week bans.
Which is about what Europe has. Many countries
Yep,
in Europe are even 12 weeks actually, outside the
yeah,
UK.
that's right. That's right. And so I think the Republican Party, instead of trying to get everything you possibly can, should look at it pragmatically and be like, okay, we know where the populace is. Let's focus on passing 15-week abortion bans. And if if you can't do that, that's really unfortunate. But but instead of jumping the gun and getting as much as you can, in a couple of states, and having it backfire, in 2 times as many other states, now we have a abortion amendment, in Ohio, and I think kind of unnecessarily. I don't think that had to happen, and it did. And so I think it's a lesson to learn for the for how we campaign.
And yeah, healthcare where couldn't get anything passed. When Trump got elected and there was a majority. Again, they had 8 years to sit on the idea of what are we going to do with the healthcare question. They get the power to do something, and they don't have any strategy behind it, and it fails. What they proposed was a horrible bill, and it should have failed because it wasn't going to be a solution. And you see again here, plenty of time to think about where they stand on this position and how to implement that. And there's no strategy behind it, and it's showing. It just, many of these big issues, Republican Party doesn't have strategy behind, and when it's their time to implement, it shows how their parents are just caught on the ground.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, it's certainly frustrating. But well, I think that probably wraps up the. Was there
I
anything
think
else you wanted to add about the election?
so. Now, I think we're all good to wrap up this week's episode of Yuppies and Harpoon.
Okay. All right. Well, yes, this was a good conversation about the most recent election and the GOP debate. We hope that you guys enjoyed that. Please be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We know that we got some feedback on some of the more controversial clips that are circulating out there. We do thank you for watching our reels and watching our shorts. It's been very helpful in getting a little bit of subscribers on our YouTube channel specifically. Next week, we hope to dive into more subjects. So stay tuned for next week, and we will see you in about 7 days.